Welcome once again to Global Reports here on Liberty Television in Kaduna, Nigeria. I am Arthur Brooks. We are broadcasting throughout Nigeria on Startimes Network, Channel 180, also in Ghana, Côte d'Ivoire, Togo, Benin and Niger republics, Chad and Sudan, all across West Africa on MultiTV. And for our viewers in Jos and Plateau State, we're on free-to-air, free TV on channel 775. You can also follow us live on the internet worldwide from our website www.libertytvradio.com. Today, as usual, we look back on some of the reports that have featured in the world's news from the past 7 days. Today, I'm joined in the studio by a familiar face to you all, and my colleague Rashid Onyangi. Welcome to the studio, Rashid.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Glad to be here.
Our first item will be our global newspaper report, so stand by for that. This week's USA Washington Post features a front page picture of Louisiana residents in flooded streets following torrential rains in that state. It also features on the front page a report on Donald Trump's call for extreme vetting of Muslim visitors and migrants if he becomes president of the USA. A cartoon in the US Herald Tribune this week shows Hillary Clinton, the Democratic presidential campaign nominee, looking very calm and relaxed as her opponent, Donald Trump, the Republican nominee, commits more gaffes in his speeches. Singapore Today newspaper on Wednesday carries the front page picture showing a coffin carrying the body of the former Singapore President S.R. Narath for burial, leaving his family home for the cemetery. Mourners include current Singapore Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong. S.R. Narath was President of Singapore from 1999 to 2011. The Japan English language newspaper, the Japan Times, this week includes a picture of the closing ceremony of the Rio Olympic Games, with a picture of the final scene of the closing ceremony, in which the words in large letters, "See you in Tokyo," which are referring to the next Olympic Games in 2020, are clearly pictured. The UK Times newspaper today's front page pictures Laura Trott, the first British woman to win 4 Olympic gold medals, pictured at the Rio Olympics. Another article entitled "Jail at Last for Hate Cleric After Terror Links Exposed" reports on Anjem Chowdhury, who was found guilty this week in London after being convicted of terrorism offences for preaching terrorism and signing an oath of allegiance to the so-called Islamic State. He was seen as encouraging other terrorists who went on to commit acts of terrorism. He is expected to be sentenced to at least 10 years in prison. Today's UK Guardian newspaper carries on its front page a picture of survivors being rescued from collapsed buildings in a village in central Italy, following a deadly earthquake yesterday morning that has killed so far an estimated 147 people. The UK political magazine The Statesman carries on its front page a caricature of resigned UK Prime Minister David Cameron, in which he appears to have caught his foot in a European Union ballot box. The accompanying article takes a backward glance at David Cameron's career and the reasons why the failure of the UK electorate to follow his party mandate to vote to stay in the European Union, which led to Brexit and his own exit. This week, we saw the closing of the Olympic Games, rather the end of last week, and it was a great event, and I think everybody won some gold medals. Did we win in Nigeria?
Except Nigeria.
Except Nigeria.
Well, we got it made up.
Well, we did something. We should try harder next time. One little thing happened in the Rio de Janeiro games. There was a young Ethiopian runner named Felisa Lilesa won a silver medal for running. But as he ran to the finish line, he held his arms up in a protest against the treatment of his own people, the Oromos, in Ethiopia. So this has caused him to have problems with the Ethiopian government. Although the Ethiopian president said he would be welcomed back as a hero, he kind of thinks otherwise, and he's considering going to the United States. So if you can just watch this short report from CNN TV News.
Athlete has gained a global stage from these Olympics, but he fears retaliation because of it. An Ethiopian runner crossed his arms over his head after he won silver in the marathon on Sunday. He says his gesture is a political protest that puts himself and his family in danger. Ethiopia's government says that's not the case. Well, for more on this, I'm joined by David McKenzie in Joburg. Hi there, Dave. Why does this athlete say that gesture is so dangerous that he just can't go home?
Well, hey, Robin, you know, any Ethiopian in Ethiopia or in the diaspora would immediately recognize the crossed arms above the head gesture that Fiesa Lelesa made as he crossed the finish line for the marathon to get his silver medal. And it is a gesture, a symbol used by the Oromo protest movement, which has been simmering for decades and exploding in recent months. Oromo are the largest ethnic group in Ethiopia, of which the athlete is a member. And he says that they have been persecuted, that the government has cracked down on them through these protests, and he wanted to make a symbolic gesture on the biggest stage of all. He says that if he goes back, he could be arrested or even killed, that he fears for his wife and 2 children in Ethiopia. But the communications minister of Ethiopia telling CNN that, in fact, he has nothing to fear and that he is an Ethiopian hero. So certainly we'll have to wait and see what he does next, whether he tries to get asylum in Brazil or US and Kenya, he also mentioned, or whether he'll take the risk to go home.
Okay, so questions about what next for him, but what does the IOC have to say about political statements? They're pretty strict on that one.
Well, yes, well, it's in their charter, Robin, and politics and sport, they say, shouldn't mix at the Olympics, but it always has, and there have been dramatic moments, most famously in 1968 after the 200-meter final. You had the 2 American athletes giving the Black Power salute at a time of a great importance in the civil rights movement in the U.S. They were stripped of their medals by the organizing committee of the Games, the Olympic Committee of the Games. Obviously, history was on their side in the end, and some feel that this protest by this Ethiopian runner will take on that kind of iconic status and certainly at the very least put the spotlight on the issues of Oromo in Ethiopia, which is an underreported and often difficult to report issue because of the constraints placed on it by the Ethiopian government. Robin?
Okay, thanks so much. David McKenzie there updating us on an important story. Thank you.
Okay, this is an interesting situation. He has reported as stating, "They will kill me. I haven't another visa. Maybe I'll stay here. If I can get a visa, I can go to America," the 26-year-old silver medalist said. This is interesting when you make a protest on the world stage, particularly in a sporting event. You have to be careful. Rashid, what do you think?
Well, sporting events have always presented a platform for people with grievances to air them, because you're in the eyes of the world, right from the 1940s when Jesse Owens, protested in Germany with the Black Power salute, and subsequently after that, So, but I think Ethiopia is a democracy, presumably, and their citizens have freedom of speech, and this freedom of speech is not restricted. It's like somebody from Nigeria, for example, protesting against the Niger Delta, what they call marginalization or Biafra, that would be considered a legitimate expression for which that person is not likely to suffer any consequences in Nigeria. Here, I should think. Ethiopia, I really can't say, because as much as we all know that Ethiopia is a democracy like Nigeria, it's probably not true, since we already witnessed the presumed persecution of this man's ethnic group.
Yeah, the Oromos.
Okay. So, but this protest definitely does call attention to what is going on in Ethiopia, and if the Ethiopian government is embarrassed and they are not happy about it, is understandable. But I think the eye of the world is on him too, and it's not likely he will face any persecution if he returns to Ethiopia.
Yeah, it's true. And several rights groups, including Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, have reported that up to 400 Oromos have been killed in clashes between the security force and protests. Unfortunately, we have to move on. I'd like to spend more time on that story. In the early hours of yesterday morning, there was an earthquake in Italy. Now, people don't normally associate earthquakes with so-called civilized European countries. They're usually in remote areas like Pakistan or North Africa or somewhere.
Japan.
Well, Japan, okay, it's true. So, and we understand the latest figures. I had a note of 247, but I understand it's now more than that have been found dead. Let's just watch this video report from, I believe it's BBC.
Buildings that stood for hundreds of years crumbled in seconds. And beneath them, people. In Amatrice, under the rubble and the rock, dozens lie dead. This was Roberto's home. A rescuer calls out his name. He's answered by silence. They're searching brick by brick. This fireman says 70 people are buried in this spot alone. In Akumoli, Luciano lay crushed for 9 hours. It's a moment of relief. But his thoughts are of his sister. Where is she? He cries. I'm here. I'm not leaving you, she says. She's still wearing her pajamas and slippers. They lay asleep when the quake struck, thrown out of their beds and into a nightmare.
I was in a house on top of the hill that collapsed. I survived, thank God, and I hope that others are safe as well. I've been out here 2.5 hours in just my underwear. We are waiting to see what will happen. We don't know anything. It's terrible. I'm 65 years old and I have never experienced anything like this.
The clock in Amatrice is frozen at 3:35 a.m. The moment homes were hit, the hospital too. Everything spilled out onto the street. Just a few kilometers away in Alicia, help is slow to arrive.
We're waiting for the military. The military because we pay for the military. There is a base in Ascoli, one in Rieti, and in L'Aquila, and we have not seen a single soldier. We pay. It's disgusting.
The Italian Prime Minister said it was a time for action.
In
these hours, the work is going on. We must equip ourselves for the emergency of the upcoming hours, of the next days, of the coming weeks. But above all, the priority is to continue digging up the ruins.
High in the hills, an 80-year-old woman. Try to stay calm, she's told. Help is coming. It did. She survived. Her daughter did not. They went to bed last night and didn't wake up. Dreams buried beneath brick and stone.
Natural disasters seem to be coming fast and furious these days. I guess people blame it on global warming or something like that. In this particular disaster, it was what they call a magnitude 6.2 on the Richter scale, which is a fairly powerful earthquake. And in fact, but the interesting thing is, it's, every nation has to be prepared for disasters. Even we in Nigeria, though we don't have earthquakes, we do have floods. Of course, we do have civil disturbances, and every town, every city, every state needs to be prepared. We have NEMA, is it? NEMA, yes. But also, somebody was talking the other day about we have something called Murtala Square, and there's some disputes that the government want to take parts of it over and build a shopping mall. And somebody quite rightly pointed out in a meeting with the governor, which I was present, there's such places like Murtala Square are green belts in the middle of the city, open areas, where in case of a national or local or state disaster, you could send people to be accommodated or to be assisted, and it becomes like a muster point for the people of the city. So it's very important. Rashid,
it's rather unfortunate that Nigeria, we don't tend to think ahead. We take a lot of things for granted, and natural disaster is one of the things we always believe will never happen to us. Just about a few weeks ago, there was actually an earth tremor somewhere in Kaduna State, southern Kaduna State, which scared a lot of people. But it's a tremor, so it's nothing close to the kind of earthquake that we have seen in Italy. But in terms of our response to emergencies in Nigeria, I would say it's really rather poor, though we do have a structure in place that's supposed to deal with national emergencies. But if you see what is happening with the IDPs now, for example, which is supposed to fall under the rubric of emergency response system, it is unfortunate. And also, we never know, Kaduna is constantly under the threat of flood. And the last time this happened, the response of the government was rather lackluster, because no people are still crying today. Much of what's supposed to be done to mitigate future flooding has really not taken off to any significant level. In fact, if I may say, some of those areas that were supposed to be dredged are actually being sand-filled. Right here behind Angwarimi. It's really unfortunate, and it's time we begin to actually plan for the future in terms of the responses we will muster for emergency. And you are right about that Murtala Mohammed Square issue. No responsible government will go to that place and turn it into a shopping mall. Who's going to shop there with the economic condition we are facing? In any case, that place has become a center of recreation for a lot of people. If I want to play football, I want to jog, it's a race course, for example. Why don't you just repair it and open it to the public for recreational activities instead of shopping mall? Go and locate your shopping mall elsewhere, outside town. If you can't drive to the shopping mall, then to stay at home and shop in your neighborhood. The whole idea of shopping mall is even going out of business, because most shops now are retail shops, online shops that actually deliver to their customers direct.
And anyway, the current economic problems we're facing,
yes,
nobody
we
has
don't
much
need
money
a
to go
shopping
to
mall. We need places where people can sit down and reflect and relax, because tension is really much.
Tension, yes.
Yeah,
I quite agree, and I think at this point we're running out of time once again. So please join us on our Facebook page on Liberty Global Reports, where you can see videos of our previous programs together with media and information on what you're seeing today, on the stories we've covered. You can also post messages and read what others think. And I'd like to once again thank my guest, Rashid Onyengi, for coming on the show.
Pleasure to be here.
And for more Global Reports, please join us here in the studio next Monday, same time, same place. This is Arthur Brooks and all our program and studio crew here in Kaduna. From Liberty Global Reports, have a fantastic weekend.